country called Nigeria. The country is actually not working the way it ought to be working for the benefit of everybody. And the reason is not far-fetched. If you trace the history of Nigeria, prior to 1960, there were several constitutional conferences that were held in London, attended by our founding fathers. As at the time, they were negotiating our independence in 1960. They were more interested in driving away the colonial masters first as their major objective. Let us drive the colonial masters away. Then we'll come back, sit down, and rearrange the country called Nigeria. And in 1960, we had the 1960 Independence Constitution that gave Nigeria independence. And between 1960 and 1963, our founding fathers came back and sat down, looked at each other eyeball to eyeball, and said, look, we cannot run away from our differences. This is a multicultural, multi-religious, and multi-ethnic nation. And wherever you have multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and multicultural nation, the best political structure for that nation is federalism. And that was why they came with the Federal Constitution of 1963, the 1963, that allowed regions to run independently, and they contributed resources for funding the federal government. And it was the military incursion in 1966 that abandoned the structure, the federal structure that was in place, the 1963 Constitution that was in place, that led to rapid development. In fact, it was a healthy competition between the regions. University of Ibadan came into existence, not to be left behind. The Easterners decided to set up University of Nigeria in Nsukka. In order not to be left behind, the Northerners decided to set up University of Ahmadu Bello University. So there was a healthy competition. Each region was developing at its own pace until the military came, collapsed the entire structure, and began running a unitary system. It can't work. It can't take us anywhere. Going to the center for every little thing that has to do with security, road construction, agriculture, education, and all the rest of them, this country is not developing at the rate it should develop. So we need to come back to the drawing board and tell ourselves the truth that this country is not working the way it should work, and we need to go back and devolve power back to the states, the local government, and let the federal government be a very lean structure. Maybe monetary policies, foreign policy, defense, and all the rest of them. But most other powers should be devolved back to the state so that the government will be closer to the people, and the people will be able to hold their government accountable. Every little to everybody is holding the president accountable because the president has too much power at his disposal. And so virtually there's so much at the center that virtually everybody sees the president as the alpha and omega of Nigeria because he has so much power at his hand. And there's need for us to whittle down the power, devolve it back to the states so that the states and the local government can have so much and the people will know who to hold accountable. For example, take the issue of security. It's not done anywhere. I'm glad that even El-Rufai just said it, that it is not done anywhere. Federal structure, you have just one single police, federal police, the police from Abuja. The governor of Lagos State has no power. Meanwhile, we say he's the number one security officer of Lagos State. Yet, he cannot give instruction to the police commissioner in Lagos. In fact, if you have two different parties governing at the federal and the state level, there's always a conflict between the CP's allegiance, the commissioner of police allegiance, whether to the federal or to the state. There's always a conflict. We saw it when Rotimi Amechi was governor of Rivers State. When the CP was loyal to the PDP federal government, and they were fighting, they were at loggerhead with the CP. Meanwhile, it ought not to be so. The governor ought to be the chief security officer of his state. If there's anything happening in a state, the governor should be the first person that should be held responsible. But a situation where the CP of a state will need to take instruction from the IG or to the president, it will not augur well, and we can't have security covering the entire nation. So we need to go back to the drawing board, except we are deficient ourselves. This structure can't work. It has not worked and will never work.
Thank you, sir. So taking you back to the Fulani Esme and the Sunday Igboho saga.